Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
Qualified on the pole, win the race. Gets out, he's got blood all over him. I said, dude, look at your hands. He goes, yeah, them stitches wasn't no good. He was the closest to Sam I ever worked with.
Ron Hornaday was?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, he was as fierce as him. I mean, he knew what he wanted, and he knew he could drive those wheels off one. He looked at my wife and said, you got all your affairs in order? I said, what? He goes, you got a day or less to live. He goes, I'm going to try to save you.
You texted me a pretty awesome photo of your son, Max, a few weeks ago. What was going on in that photo?
I'm being a proud dad. Really proud.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
He made it to the championship banquet, didn't he?
Yes.
Did you know at that point that he wasn't going to be able to race the next year, or did that come later?
I knew it was going to be tough for him to start back at Daytona, but it wasn't out of the question. We didn't think, and we picked Jimmy to drive, and it started off really good with him. I thought we could have won a championship with him, but that goes back to a little confrontation with Jack. Jack couldn't stand it because I think we took off. We should have won Daytona. If we'd had a spotter, he could have got up. We should have won there. I was going to win Martinsville, and Jack crashed him. I mean, just flat out crashed him halfway down the straightaway. And it just seemed like everything kind of fell apart. But we still ran good, don't get me wrong. But you're always going, when Sam, you heard that all the time. And then when he did come back and drive some races at Caraway and won, I went and watched him, but you could tell he was different. He was different.
You've said that Sam taught you a lot about life, and that you've tried to pass that along to anybody in the younger generations who would listen. What did you learn about life from Sam Ard?
Just, you need to take the moment in. People don't get it, like how tough it was. Like one instance, he was late coming to South Boston one night, and I'm like, where is this at? He ain't here. Where's he at? And the practice has already started. He wasn't here, and you may not even know this, but I look. He's the old Ford van sitting up his first year. He's flashing the lights, so they let him in, right? So we're going to run the next. He gets out. He's got his arm bandaged from his fingertips to his shoulder. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, have you ever tried to cut any water pipe with a pocket knife? I said, no. What are you doing? He goes, he always had a real sharp pocket knife, and his well messed up at home, so he was working on his well at home. So he ended up stuck a pocket knife through his hand all the way through.
Oh, gosh.
Had like 14 stitches. He's taking the bandages off as he's telling me. So he gets in, qualified on the pole, win the race, gets out, he's got blood all over him. I said, dude, look at your hands. He goes, yeah, them stitches wasn't no good. I'm like, geez. Yeah. But, his family, he was a family guy. He cared about them a lot, and it made me think, we're just racing. It's a car race, but he still, he'd get out, and his family was there, and he had to go home and do this and do that, and he cared about it. He spent a lot of money on his family. Whatever they needed, they got it.
Jimmy Hensley, you mentioned, came on board in 1985. How difficult was it to adjust to having somebody in the car other than Sam?
Well, Jimmy, he's lived in Virginia, had a regular job and whatever, and he would just show up at the track. Sam was more hands-on and knew it was just different than driver setups and everything. It took a while to get the hang of Jimmy, and Jimmy wasn't as aggressive as Sam was. Sam would, if it was a foot, he'd stick it in there. You know what I mean? Because he raced like, as I would say, Dale Earnhardt did in his young. He raced because he needed the money.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Jimmy didn't need the money, but Jimmy had a regular job. You know what I mean? He didn't have to do it to live.
Yeah.
And we did.
You finished second in the standings with Jimmy in 85, and then again with Brett Bodine in 86, and then third with Brett in 87. After the years that you'd had with Sam, were you satisfied with those kinds of results?
No, because if you add up the points we lost by, we should have won 5 in a row the way I see it.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at, like, we should have done this here, we should have done this here, we should have done this here. It should have been 5 championships with 3 different drivers. And that's the way I see it. Am I happy we won the 2? Yeah, because we won a lot of races with Sam. We won races with Jimmy. We won a few races with Brett. But we should have won a lot more. I mean, in the real world, that's the way I look at it.
I'm trying to phrase this the best way possible, but what was it like working with a Yankee in Brett Bodine?
Well, how I knew Brett was when he ran modifieds for Sherry Cup and the Carrazos or what. When they would come down, he would work on his car at Jay's, which before I even worked for Sam, I knew Brett and Jeff and Todd and all that. And how he got in there really was, quote unquote, Howard Thomas said, Jimmy's not aggressive enough for me. And you wouldn't know that from Howard because he's just a little gray-haired guy, you know. I get it. You know, it's hard to compare them to. Well, then Brett had won those races for Hendrick in the Levi Garrett car. Well, they were looking for a place to put him. Didn't have a spot. Rick gave that Superflow sponsorship to Howard, gave it to him if you put him in there. That's how that happened. Brett and I were already friends. Never dreamed about really working together, even though we cup race and everything after that. But that's how you work. I mean, that's how I worked with him. I mean, once you put that helmet on, he's Yankee, Northern, South. It doesn't really matter. I know how it is.
Yeah. How did you wind up leaving the Ham team?
Well, we were going to build a couple of new cars, and Brett was leaving. He was gone. And I could see the sport was changing a lot. And I got an opportunity to go help Bobby Hillen with Todd Bodine through Felix Sabatas and Ted Condor. Bobby was starting a team, and they called and asked me if I was be interested. So I rode all the way to Mooresville, right there beside Stavola Brothers, and they had a building with 3 walls on it and a chassis sitting in the floor. I'm like, that was it, no equipment, anything. So Todd and I got everything.
A building with 3 walls.
Yeah, they weren't done building it. They were building it as we went.
Yeah.
The chassis was sitting on 4 cinder blocks.
Wow.
And so we did everything, finished the building, got all the equipment, went to Daytona, sat on the outside pole.
You went from working for Howard Thomas to working for Felix Sabatas.
Yeah.
How much of a difference were there in those 2 guys?
Lord have mercy. Felix was, at the track all the time. Howard would show up once in a while, hardly ever. Sometimes he'd just sit in the stands. You wouldn't even know he'd be there.
Really?
Yeah. Like we won in Charlotte, he was in the stands, went home. He didn't come to victory lane, because you're supposed to win.
Yeah.
Felix is, Felix is his own character. I loved working for him. And how the reason Hillen started that deal is because he, a lot of people thought he couldn't do it, and he was going to show them that he could. And we won races with him, Nazareth and Dover, and I won with him and Kenny Watt, a bunch of people.
Yeah. So you wound up joining Roush Racing in late 1992 to help start up the second team.
Correct.
But apparently they didn't last very long.
About a week. I worked there like from Richmond in the fall in the shop, it's still Folgers. And we were preparing, getting chassis and stuff, getting ready to start the second team for Wally with Keystone Beer, I think it was. Yeah, and it came to the end of the year when the season was over. Well, the entire 6 team left.
Where'd they go?
Well, Robin went on
Sabco.
Sabco.
Yeah.
Okay, and then like Steve Spar, the engine guy, he went to juniors, and everybody just kind of went to different ways. So Steve goes, okay, it was myself, Jeff Troxler, Chris Huzzy, and 2 or 3 others that were already getting ready to do the 16 car. He goes, you just move y'all over here and we'll get all new people for the 16. Because Steve and I and Huzzy worked with me at Thomas Brothers part-time, when he was a kid and all. But he's always a kid to me. He's like my son. But he just moved over here because Steve and I, he goes, we're already working. I know the program. You can teach all these other guys. And that's how that happened.
Wow. You have called working with Steve Mill, Jack Roush, and that organization a blessing. Why was that?
Well, you learn so much because they were so organized and how to do stuff the right way. Like what it took to get, and you had Mark, and it was just it's a professional race team, and you had each section. We did a lot. We had 2 Cup cars and a Busch car and 35 people, and we did everything but build the engines. Think about that.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of work went on. We go to the racetrack with 5 or 6 people until race day.
Wow.
And it was a building full of racers.
You worked the rest of the 90s at the Cup level with folks like Morgan Shepherd and Rick Mast and Brett Bodine, and then you went Busch racing in the year 2000 with Dale Earnhardt Incorporated with Ron Hornaday. How did that offer come about?
Well, I was like in between right before that happened. I went to a few Busch races with Terry Labonte and Bob Labonte, and when Bobby was running and Terry was running a couple of races. We were at Michigan, and Terry went back to the Cup garage, and I walked over there to talk to him, and he was parked right beside Dale. And practice fixing to start, and I hear somebody going, hey, hey. And I look, and it's Dale. He's in his car, winding net up. He's like, come here. So I'm walking around, what? And he grabbed my shirt and pulled my head between the A-post and the window net. And I'm like an inch from his face. He goes, what are you doing? And I said, I'm helping Terry on that Busch car. You don't need to be doing that. I'm like, why? And he goes, you need to be over there working with us. I'm like, doing what? He goes, oh, we're getting ready to do some stuff with Dale Jr. and Hornaday's going to do this and that. And I want you to come over there, just get with Steve Mill and get with Ty Narson and be over there Monday. I'm like, what? So he starts the car, puts it in gear, starts backing up and pushes my head out the window. And I'm like, what in the world just happened? So I see Steve, and he goes, yeah, he goes, he already talked to you? I went, mm-hmm. He goes, be over there Monday. So I drove over there Monday and pull up out front by the guard shack, and the little door opens, and he goes, come in here. And I've known him when he didn't have anything, right? Yeah. So I go into the stairs, and the walls got gold blocks on it. I said, I'm real gold, shut up, So he goes in there, and we didn't talk about anything. He said, sit down right here and fill out these papers, these insurance papers, this and that. And he goes, he's starting to work. I'm like, I am? Yep. He said, go down there to the shop now. And so that's how that happened. People don't believe it. That's exactly how it happened.
What was it like working for him?
It was wonderful. He was hard, but he was fair. He was something else. Like, I got to work one morning real early, a funny story. It's sleet and snow, and had to go through a gate, unlock another gate, and get in the shop. Well, I hear something out there like a flagpole going ding, ding, ding. I look out there, I can barely see him. He's out there with a hammer hitting on the gate, knocking ice off. I said, what are you doing? He goes, you made a mess this gate up. What time you come to work? I said, I don't know, it's early. I just come on in because it's slick. He goes, well, ice builds up on this gate when it opens and closes. I usually get up and knock it off when Mike comes in. I said, well, I figure as much money as you got now, they'd be heated. He goes, shut up. And he did a couple of donuts in his truck and laughed and went out in the road. But he was a good guy. There was times, like we tested, was on Hornaday when we won Nazareth and it was really, really fast. And Earnhardt said, look, I know y'all tested, you've come up with this right rear spring deal. It won't last but 2 or 3 weeks before people find out, so don't say a word. Okay. Win the race, Hornaday gets out. Y'all ain't going to believe it. We went and tested. We got on this right rear spring. It's so stiff. And I'm in the background going, no, no. So we get to work Monday, and the loudspeaker comes on. Hey, Gere Kennon, I want come up in my office. And I'm like, oh, God. So I go in there. He got his feet on the desk. Hornaday just sitting there looking at the floor. I said, what's the matter? And he goes, I told y'all not to say nothing about that. And I'm like, I wasn't on TV. I didn't say nothing, but I'm sitting there thinking, I wasn't on TV. He was. He's yelling, pissed off, you know. Meeting's over, and he said, all right, Hornaday, you can leave. Jerry, you stay here. Okay. I'm like, now what? So he goes out and shuts the door. He looked at me because I just had to do that in front of him because you was there too. I said, all right. He's not going around there and get to work, you know.
How'd you wind up leaving? Did you go to Debadar's then?
Yep.
Okay.
Whenever Michael, they were going to do a cup deal, and they were ordered. They came down there and said, order 11 cars and make them just like Steve Parks and all that. Well, then you know how people kind of act on. I really wasn't interested in doing it. You know what I mean? I was, but I wasn't. But that's just another story. But anyway, they came and said, well, you know, we're going to get somebody else to do it. And I said, okay. Well, then that's when David Art called me and said, look, we need some help. And I went and I said, okay, if I come, I want the keys to the place. You're gonna stand behind me because it ain't gonna be pretty to start with. Because that's when you had 2 cars and you know, and he had a mess really.
You had a pretty substantial health scare when you were working as Tim George's truck crew chief at RCR
and team manager for the truck. Yeah.
What year was that? 12, 11?
12, yeah,
okay.
Something like that.
And you've said that if it hadn't been for your wife and some other folks, you wouldn't be here, right?
I wouldn't be here.
What happened?
Well, I had been having trouble with my hip hurting, you know, and I figured it was football or racing or whatever. And it got to where I couldn't straighten my leg out, and they kept saying it was a hamstring. I'm like, nah. I went and had cortisone shot. It lasted about a week. Nobody really could tell me. Well, then I went and seen a therapist at RCR up in the gym, and she stretched my leg out one day, and I felt something pop, you know, like a tendon or something. It didn't hurt, but it just something pop. And I could walk better after that, but I got so sick that night I figured I had like food poisoning. We were going to Rockingham to test the next day. The next morning I couldn't get out of bed. My hands, my knees, they look like, my hands are like Mickey Mouse. They swelled up so big. What I do? I go to test anyway. Well, I'm sick. I mean, I cannot keep anything down. Well, P.J. Bryant, that built our shocks there, he was he was worried. I couldn't even get out of the car. I stayed in the car and talked back and forth on the radio and couldn't get enough water to drink. And they kept coming and check on me. He went and talked to the nurse in a helicopter at the racetrack. He goes, can you come look at him? And she come ask me, said, can you get out of the car? I was like, So the next thing I know, I'm on the stretcher and I'm going to Rockingham, right? Well, they had me in the hospital, and I hardly remember much of this, but I was there about a week, and Todd Bodine and John Monson came in and seen me and told my wife, said, if you don't move him, he ain't going to make it. Because they come twice, and each time I was worse. They kept saying I had pneumonia or something, but I didn't. So Richard was going to get me flown to Charlotte in a helicopter, which was broke, thank goodness. But I don't like helicopters. On glide ratio is not good. But so I got my wife got me transferred, and I went and moved me to CMC. And this Dr. Tanner, an infectious disease doctor, came in my room, and it was just like something out of the movies. I couldn't walk or anything. I remember this. And I weighed 299. I was heavy. I was putting on weight like crazy for some reason. I've always been a little heavy. He comes in the room with a clipboard, and he looks at me and all these nurses, and he goes, what are you here for? Threw her out. Threw all the nurses out. Told my wife, said, you his wife, sit down. I said, hey, man, you ain't talking to her that way. He goes, look, He said, my name's Dr. Tanner, and it's MD. You know what the MD's for? I went, medical doctor? He goes, no, make decisions. He goes, you've been misdiagnosed. He goes, what you've had is a staph infection in your body, and it's burst, and your body is shutting down. He goes, he looked at my wife and said, you got all your affairs in order? I said, what? He goes, you got a day or less to live. He goes, I'm going to try to save you. I said, well, that make decisions, you better get after it. And I had to learn to walk and everything again.
And it was from the therapist?
I had a staph infection. It's like a poison sac that builds up in your body because you got staph on you anyway. Yeah. And don't know how I got nothing. When she bent my leg back, it burst. So my lungs, all four of my heart valves, they were talking about replacing them all. My lungs, my kidney, everything was shutting down. And if I'd have stayed in Rockingham, I would have passed away. So if it hadn't been for P.J. Bryant getting me to the hospital and Todd and them and my wife getting me moved, and thank God for Dr. Tanner. I mean, he was a rough dude, but he was on the money. You know, I mean, and then, you know, there's been a couple other scares because later in life he said you're going to have trouble with your heart from this, which I did, and I've had a heart surgery since then, but in Duke. So, but you got to be tough.
How long was it before you felt like Gere Kennon again?
Well, I was in the hospital from October the 3rd to the day before Thanksgiving.
Wow. And
when I got out, I felt all right. You know, I felt good, but I mean, I was a lot slower. And then built my strength back up and got going again. And which then my sugar was all out of whack.
Was it really?
Yeah, from that.
Yeah.
But then I got that under control.
All right. More recently, you worked quite a bit and won some truck races with John Hunter.
Yeah.
Nemechek. What does that young man bring to the table as a driver?
He's fierce. You know, and I turned that job down first and went to NTS for a little bit and then come right back, which I should have had my head examined.
Yeah.
Because that for him being as young as he was, I've never worked with anybody that could run lap after lap after lap so consistent. And Joe taught him that because when they ran those Allison Legacy cars, he would put new tires on Joe's car and make John Hunter run used ones, and they would run lap after. And he could run every machine in that company. He knew how to. I mean, he can do it all. I mean, he was hands-on. When he was there, he was hands-on. Now, he was just like any other young person. He got to go, nightlife or whatever, you know.
Yeah. So you've mentioned that you've had a heart surgery and everything. At what point did you decide to step back from the highest levels of NASCAR and concentrate on late model stuff?
Well,
were those two related?
With John Hunter, we ran the late model car and the trucks before he could run them all.
Right.
You know, and Joe would run the bigger races. And we made their program better, or I felt like I did, getting some different people in there. And we won the Snowball Derby with John Hunter. We should have won it 3 times in a row. I mean, we were so far ahead technology-wise when we won it over some of the other cars. Now everybody's running the same kind of stuff. But it was a future there, and I stayed there for like 8 years, you know, or whatever. I think that's what it was. But when John Hunter decided to leave, and which I'm good, it had to go, you know, it needed to go. I was offered through Bon Sus, he needed some help with some late model stuff and teaching the Toyota drivers through Donnie Wilson, who owns the team out of Oklahoma and based here in Mooresville. We started with like a couple cars. Now we got 11, you know, and we got 6 employees instead of just 2 or 1, you know, and it's blown up. People compared Donnie's late model deal as a Rick Hendrick of late model racing because it's expanded so much in 2 years.
Wow. So you are still racing and winning. You won the Snowball Derby last year?
Correct. Year before.
Okay, year before.
With Chandler Smith.
Didn't you win at Wilkesboro also?
Yes. Yeah, we won 14 races last year.
Wow. What's it like to be still racing and still winning after all these years?
I love it. I mean, it's
Now, what are you doing? Are you the crew chief or
no
team manager?
No,
or just
I'm just help, and like we run 4 cars at speed weeks. I kind of go in between. I'm like the guys fixing stuff. They get hung up on stuff, you know. Being a crew chief it's okay. I don't.
You just want to be hands on.
Yeah, I'm a hands-on person. I always have been, you know. And now, like the Cup and all that, it's all, my son works at JTG. It's all so much computer-driven, and they took as a previous podcast with Buddy, they kind of took all the ingenuity out of it, a lot of it. You know, I'm sure there's ways around stuff, but it's all, I told Brett Bodine before they ever had the COT cars that one of these days you'll have cars, you'll buy them all from NASCAR, and you'll put the numbers on them, and you'll go race. So where are we at?
Yeah. So you mentioned Max just a second ago. You texted me a pretty awesome photo of your son, Max, a few weeks ago. What was going on in that photo?
I'm being a proud dad. Really proud. As much as I steered him away from it, he's knee deep. Can't ask for more.
Daytona 500, baby.
Whew. He done something I hadn't. He told me, let me wear the ring about 15 minutes. But we went and got, I hadn't seen a picture of it, went and took a trophy picture with me and him. It's awesome. What made it even better was the little team. It's just, me personally, I don't do as good with big teams. I'm too hands-on, I guess. I'm not a politician.
Really?
Not at all. So I'm proud of him. As long as he keeps digging.
All right, man. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of some of the stories that you could tell. Is there a story that you want to tell, or that you think that people would enjoy, or just tell me some stories, man?
Let's see. Well, the pocket knife deal with him winning, and with Sam. And then one time we did run that old car, like I said, we had a quick change, and the big gear always goes on top. Well, I, in a hurry, put the little gear on top, and we won a race at Caraway. He shifted to fourth gear, and the car just fell on its face. He run the whole race holding it in third gear. But you just want to step back and look at all. I mean, people don't believe some of the stuff that's happened. Like with Dale Earnhardt, I'm sitting there going to leave work one day, and I was driving one of his pickup trucks, just waiting on the gate to open. And I'm just sitting there, and the gate's opening, and somebody hit me from behind so hard it knocked my sunglasses off, and it's him. He had run into his own truck with his own truck. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I know what you're sitting there thinking." I said, "What?" He goes, during that gate. And I said, "Well, I do have a question about it." He goes, "What is it?" I said, "Is that gate to keep us in, or is it to keep them out?" He goes, "Well, you just don't never know." And he's black marks out in the road up to the big shop, You
had some trouble with that gate at DEI, didn't you?
Yeah, a couple times. But one other funny story, we was running a car on a dyno, getting ready to go to somewhere, and we had trouble with it, and I was going to let the water out up at the big shop, and the deer head shop, where he always parked right in front of the door. He never parked in a spot. Was Steve Park pulled in there, and his one of those SS Impalas, and got out, and I was walking around talking to everybody, and I'm letting the water out. And Dale comes flying in there, and his pickup truck runs right in the back of that car. gets out, walks down the side, walks across the hood of Steve Park's car and goes in the deer head shop. Steve Park comes out there. What's going on? I said, I wouldn't go over there. Dale come out and says, that's my spot. I told you not to park there.
Steve Park parked in Dale Earnhardt's spot.
Yeah, in front of the deer head shop where he always, he just run into it and walks across the hood.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's crazy, you know. But caution come out at Darlington one time with a Hornaday, and Earnhardt come on the radio and said, Hornaday, the caution's out. Slow down, slow down. I said, Dale. He goes, yeah. I says, you watch it on TV? He goes, yeah. I said, it's about a 5-second delay. The caution's been out. All right, I'll just shut up. But one of the proudest moments I had there was build a car for Speedway. Went to Daytona, sat on the outside pole with Hornaday. A lot of naysayers said it wouldn't run. The thing would fly through the green flag, and Hornaday come off the corner, and it's like 4 or 5 car lengths ahead. And Earnhardt come on the radio and said, when he keyed the mic, it was like God. I mean, it got quiet. He goes, hey, Hornaday, you better drag the brake. They're going to get in line. They're going to draft right by you. Comes off the corner. He's 10 car lengths ahead. I'm telling you, brother, they're getting in line. They're coming. They're going to come. Next corner is about 15. He goes, don't worry about it. They ain't coming. Go on. Go on. They ain't coming. But
And here they come.
they didn't get us.
Yeah.
We should have won that race, too. Just incident, you know, had a lap car blow a tire and hit us. We should have won a lot of races. Hornaday just, he was the closest to Sam I ever worked with.
Ron Hornaday was?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, he was as fierce as him. I mean, he knew what he wanted, and he knew he could drive the wheels off one.
Wow.
You know, and he would say, I'm going to do this. And like we got a lap back at Louisville one time. Jimmy Hensley was leading in a truck. He goes, you tell Jimmy Hensley I'm getting my lap back just on this restart right here. And I'm like, okay. Through the green flag, he got it.
Now, you were telling me earlier, you brought me your resume. I didn't know that you had worked with Junior Johnson
Yeah.
at one point.
Yeah.
When was that?
94.
94.
Yeah, I'd left Roush kind of unexpectedly over a few disagreements, but went to work there, and that man was so far ahead of his time. It was incredible. Really, really, if he come back today and start a team, I'd be the first one in the door, along with a lot of other people, I'm sure, like Pete Wright. And all.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
That man was the real deal. He was the cornerstone of racing.
Tell me a good Junior Johnson story.
Let's see. Well, the first week I worked there, all we did was pick up rocks and run cows. I came home for the first day from work and came in the house. I took all my clothes off in the garage, and my wife goes, how was work? Do I need to ask? I said, I got to get a shower. I got to go buy some boots. Why? I said, because the rest of my stuff's got cow manure all over it.
I bet that's the way you put it.
Yeah, not exactly, but you know, he was something else. Junior was. I mean, we were getting ready to go to Talladega test, and it was freezing, sleeting, and Junior's going up and down the runway in Elkin on his own car, spinning around. I said, "What are you doing?" I'm trying to scare these deer off the runway. Okay, so they pull the plane out, and it's sleeting bad, and I'm like, "Man, I don't want to get on this thing."
Yeah.
So everybody gets on beam, and all of them get on. And Junior would get on, and then I'd get on and shut the door. So I'm beside the steps, and Junior's beside the other side. And he looks at me, he goes, "You really want to get on here?" And I'm like, He goes, leaned his head, "Hey, Beam, if y'all want to go on and y'all make it, just send the plane back. Me and Jerry's going to eat breakfast. We all just go tomorrow." So we waited and went the next day, and flew down there, and we landed. It was 0 degrees. So we went out, and Bill gets there, and they was out there trying to melt ice for it to run across the track.
Where at?
Talladega. No, like through it had to run across, you know, where the water drains.
Now, it was 0 degrees in Talladega?
Yeah, it was cold. It was really
Talladega.
cold. Yeah.
Wow, shoot.
It was way cold in winter.
Yeah.
So I said, well, it's going to take forever for them to get that melted off. no lie, they went out there. Bill put a rent-a-car up there, and we chopped the ice and swept it out of the way. And Bill goes, right there's where I'm going to run. Come back, put his fire suit on. We went out and run by 8 laps. Come home. I'm like, I ain't never in my life seen nothing like that. I mean, they didn't melt it. He just chopped and swept it out of the way, and he ran where it was chopped.
He chopped out the ice.
We did. Chopped it and swept through the tri-oval where it run across.
Yeah, yeah.
And we swept the ice out of the way where it's like, it looked like speed bumps,
Yeah, yeah.
And we chopped it wide enough, a little twice as wide as the car. And he said, that's where I'm going to run. So that's what we did.
With the rest of the ice still on the track.
Yeah. Yep. So loaded up and went home. I was like, I ain't believing this.
Well, man, there ain't no way I want to stop on that. Tell me some. Man, I'll sit and listen to your stories forever.
I mean, I got a lot. It's crazy, a lot of them, just stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
Just people don't. You got to be hands on in the middle of it. That's the part I got to say in like when something happens at the shop. Everybody go, what happened? Oh, somebody. I said he's worked every place I ever been. If I could find him, I'd get rid of him. What happened? Somebody did it. But I like the way racing's progressed. I do and I don't. But
yeah.
It's as big as it ever was, and I'm glad it's making a comeback because it looked bleak there a few years ago. I'm glad to see those people back in the stands.
All right, cool, man. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back through this resume, and I'll come back.
We'll
come back.
Yeah.
We'll come back and talk some more. So.
I got a good one. Brett making the race. Had 4 employees.
Yeah. All right.
That was illegal. And he told it after he went to work here.
No. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We got to get that one in. Yeah, we'll get that one in this time. So keep talking about it. And then there was the time.
Well, there was a time when I went to work at Brett Bodine. He begged me to come there.
On the Cup side.
On the Cup side. Be his Cup crew chief. Yeah. And I was working in the shop at MB2 because I just had my son, Max, was born. Gina had Max. And Jay Fry and him, I'd been going on the road when Derek Cope went with MB2. And then when Ernie came, Max was on the way, and so they decided I'd stay at the shop. Well, then Jay, from being a Valvoline rep through Mark, and he knew I probably wouldn't do it because I've always been like a crew chief or a hands-on management person all my life in racing. So Brett needed some help. His Donnie had left or whatever and went to Schrader's, and so I said yes. So it was myself and like 4 and 5 employees, paycheck. I mean, it was like David and Goliath. So we go to Daytona, and we have to make it, or it's sink or swim. So back when NASCAR used to hang the weight on the back, it had like 700 pounds of weight. We had to have X amount of spring rate. So I'm like, we got to get in. So I ordered some 6-inch machinable wax and you could run spring rubbers. So I made some wax spring rubbers and put them in the springs. You could put them in, you couldn't jack the car up left or right, you had to jack it up under the back. So we're sitting at Talladega, and I had you had to have a pair of 400s or whatever in the back, and I had a pair of 150s, really soft. Steve Mill, he's in the story. He's sitting waiting to go through tech, and they'd come get you, right? Well, the pit crew guy, I didn't see him coming. He come and jacked the car up. When he did it, busted the wax, and a piece of it slid over there and hit Steve in the foot. And he picked it up, and he looked at me, and he went, and I panicked because I knew I had to fix it. So I said, just come with me. And I run in the trailer, and he jacked the back of the car up, and I got another spring because I had some made. I had to paint them black and all. And his wax was blue. I'd paint it black. He goes, what are you doing, man? And I told him, I said, look, I made this wax. I got 150.
Steve asked this?
Yeah, he's in there standing beside me because you're going to tell me. Because we go.
Now, who was he with at the time?
D.I.
Okay.
So I said, look, I ain't got time to explain it. We had to make this race. I come up with this. And he goes, you mean to tell me? He goes, you're over here at Brett Bodine Racing. He goes, y'all ain't got 2 nickels to rub together. I'm over here at DI, got a whole floor of engineers up here, and I got some redneck that made some wax. This is crazy. He said, and you go on a racetrack and they bust and you got 150-pound springs in the back and you're back like you used to be a few years ago, dragging the tail and you're going to be fast. I said, yeah, I ain't got time to explain. He goes, Jesus. So we went out, qualified good, start the race, goes out on the racetrack, they bust, they fly out, right? Well, there's a big wreck on the back. Not ever been a wreck at Talladega, but there was a big wreck on the backstretch, and Brett goes, I made it. He made it through the wreck, he said. Well, you didn't see that somebody was coming out the infield wrecking and hit him in the door, right? Bit through his tongue, broke the steering column off, big wreck. Well, they towed the car in, and I looked at the left rear, took the left rear tire off, and there's a piece of that wax sitting in the spring person. I'm like, oh, God. So I take that and throw it out. Well, come find out, Steve Peterson worked for NASCAR, then drove the pace car, I think. Yeah. Well, everybody used to come around and say, there's spring rubbers all over the track. Well, he found all that stuff, the rubbers, the plastic. He didn't know who it come from, but he had it all. He kept it all, right? Yeah. So I go to the tech center one time when I don't know if I was down there for a fine meeting or just getting something tore apart. But anyway, Brett goes, hi, yeah. He goes, Steve Peterson picked up all that wax. And I said, yeah. Because he was talking to him. He goes, yeah, I told him everything. I said, you did what? I said, why would you tell him you drank the water? What's wrong with you? And I said, now they're going to be watching me, all the time, which come find out I think they did anyway. But that was one story that was pretty big. And Steve impressed me that he worked for a multi-billion-dollar place, and there's Brett, trying to get enough fuel to get to the track, and and we made it in on that ingenuity. But they've took a lot of that away, most of it.
Now, was that something that NASCAR would not check after the race?
Mm-mm. They didn't check the weight. They didn't hang the weight on them after the race.
All right.
Not that I think that we would have finished in the top. We just trying to make it in the race.
Right. Yeah.
Because you had to be in the race probably for his sponsor to keep paying, and we did all we could. We worked night and day. But I was just more tore up about him telling it.